and the CPU or the memory inside the system. Then we had seen that there are three modes of transfer which can be used inside the system. The first mode of transport was programmed IO, second interrupt driven IO, and third was DMA. So we had started with programmed IO. What was there in programmed IO? That whenever there is a data transfer from memory to IO device or from IO device to memory, the CPU, before it starts the execution, it always has to check whether the IO device is ready or not. If the device is not ready, it will keep on checking the status till the device becomes ready. Once that IO device is ready, the CPU will complete the transfer, that is either from memory to IO device or from IO device to memory. And after that, it will again check for any other transfer or not. So there is a disadvantage of using a programmed IO, which is called as busy waiting, where the time of the CPU is wasted in every time checking the status whether the IO device is ready to transfer or not. So to overcome this drawback, we started using interrupt driven IO. What was interrupt driven IO? In interrupt driven IO, the concept of busy waiting was eliminated. That means the CPU does not check the status of the device. The CPU, if it finds that the device is busy, or if the device is not in a ready state, it will go to some another program and start the execution of that program. Once if the device here of the first program is ready, an interrupt is being generated to the CPU stating that the devices are ready, so you have to stop the current execution and come back and complete the previous execution. So because of that interrupt, the CPU is intimated and it comes back to the previous program and completes the execution, and again after the execution is completed, it goes back to complete the execution of program 2. So no time of CPU is wasted, and CPU also does not sit idle in case of interrupt driven IO. Now in programmed IO, we have two types. First was memory mapped IO and IO mapped IO. In memory mapped IO, we have seen that to perform any memory related operations or IO related operations, we had common read line, common write line, common data bus, and common address bus. So if I want to perform two operations at the same time, say one of them is memory operation and one of them is IO operation, I cannot perform both at the same time because they both are sharing a common read and a write line. So to make this parallelism possible, we started using IO mapped IO. What was happening in IO mapped IO? Your IO devices were connected to IO read and IO write, and your memory devices or the main memory was connected with memory read and memory write. So if at all there was any memory read and memory write operations, I could perform it at the same time with in parallel to your IO read and IO write. Why? Because they both were connected separately to separate read and write line. Though their data bus and address bus were common, but the reading and writing lines were separate. Therefore, it resulted into much faster execution as compared to memory IO. So today we'll be seeing what is interrupt. So what is interrupt? It is a function of an operating system that provides multi-process or multitasking. Now, what is multi-process and multitasking? Multi-process means more than one program is executed, and multitasking is more than one task can be performed. Now, what is the difference between both multi-process and multitasking? In multi-process, I can start the execution of program 1, which is say suppose addition of two numbers, as well as I can start the second program, that is multiplication of two numbers. That means two separate programs are executed simultaneously if it is multi-process. But if it is multitask, means what? I am giving you a presentation by making a presentation also visible to you, as well as I can see your Google accounts also on the screen. That means I can see the Meet window also, as well as I can see the PPT also. At the same time, if I want to listen to some songs, I can play those songs also. So at a time, I'm performing three tasks: playing of music, making you PPT visible, as well as making myself the Google Meet visible. So these are the different types of tasks. So this is a difference between multitasking and multi-programming. For example, again for multitasking, I have opened a Word file. In the background, I am copying some data into my pen drive. Again, in the background, I am playing some music, or in the another window, I am watching some videos. So this is what is called as multitasking. So what is happening in interrupt? Your interrupt allows to perform, or interrupts allow us to do this multiprocessing and multitasking. Now, when the interrupt is occurred, or when does this interrupt comes into picture is, suppose if my CPU is executing program 1. When it executes program 1, say suppose in the middle of a program, it requires some data from a main memory, or it requires some data from secondary memory, or if it requires some data from IO device. So when this data is being required, at that time CPU does not work. Why? Because what is the work of CPU? Only to execute. CPU does not do the function of collecting the data or transferring the data. The work of the CPU is only to execute the program. But who is making the transfer of the data between memory and CPU, or between memory and IO devices, or between IO device to CPU? That is the function of the buses, to take the data from one place to another. So when a program is executing, and in the middle of a program, say suppose it requires a data from a main memory, so at that time CPU will stop its function. Why? Because data is only not available, so it cannot process on that data. So at that time the bus will get activated. It will transfer the data from wherever it has to be brought inside the CPU. So for that particular moment, when the CPU has stopped working and when the bus is activated, we say that the CPU is idle. So why, to not make this CPU idle, what we are doing in the interrupt driven concept, we are making the use of the CPU somewhere else in another program. So when that CPU goes to some another program for execution, by that time this bus of the first program loads the data. As soon as the bus of the first program loads the data, the system itself will generate an interrupt. When a system generates an interrupt, what does this interrupt means? It tells the CPU that you have to stop whatever is there right now in your hand, and you have to come back and execute the previous program which you have already started the execution for. Once you complete that execution of the program, you can go back to the program number 2 and continue with its execution. So interrupt is nothing but a signal which tells the processor to stop the current work and come back to do either the previous work or some another new work, depending upon the priority. So it is nothing but a signal which is generated, or which tells the CPU to stop whatever is there in your hand right now and come back to either the previous execution or some new execution which has highest priority from the one which you are currently executing. Okay. So when a process is executed by CPU and when a user requests for another process, then it will create a disturbance for the running process. So what is happening, whenever the signal is generated or whenever this interrupt is generated, it is disturbing the current running process. Why it is disturbing the current running process? Because the CPU has come to that current process by leaving some previous process, or by it has to leave that current process and go to some new process because that new process has a highest priority. Okay, so this entire concept of generating the signal, leaving the current process, going to some another process and executing that is considered to be as a interrupt. Okay, so interrupts can be generated either by the user, some error conditions, and also by software and hardware. That means interrupts can be generated by user, they can be generated by softwares, they can be generated by hardware also. So there are various sources of interrupts. They are used to initiate or terminate the IO operation. The hardware and software errors can activate an interrupt. Now what is this? We will understand when we do these types of interrupt. So we have different types of interrupts. The first one is the program interrupt, timer interrupt, IO interrupt, and hardware failure interrupt. Let us see what is first mean by program interrupt. They are generated as a result of some program execution. That means I have given a program for execution. User has submitted a program for execution. After it has been submitted, and if an interrupt occurs, it is considered to be as program interrupt. What can be this type of interrupt? In case of there is any arithmetic overflow, which means what? Now suppose I have given two 8 bits number and I have asked the addition of two 8-bit number. Okay, so if the result of that 8-bit number is suppose something like 32 bits or 64 bits, which should not be, result of 8-bit number should be 8-bit number. But if suppose in case it is not a 8-bit number, instead of that if it is 10 bits or 12 bits or 32 bits, something like that, we call it as arithmetic overflow. So whenever there is any kind of a overflow, a system will generate an interrupt, and that generated interrupt is considered to be as program interrupt. Why it is program interrupt? Because it is generated during the execution of the program. because of the result of that particular execution of the program. Now, second type of program error may be division by zero. Now you might study this in Java, that is division by zero. Whenever I try to divide any number by zero, your system gives me an error. So that type of error is considered to be as a program interrupt. So suppose if I've given a program of dividing the two numbers, and if that result or if that execution of the program has given me an error called as division by zero, where a number is trying to get divided by zero, in this case it will give me an error, and that will be called as program interrupt error. Why? Because it has been generated during the execution of a program where a number was trying to divide itself with a zero. So such type of errors which are generated because of the result of some programs, they are called as program interrupt. Okay. The next we have is timer interrupt. What is timer interrupt? They are generated within the processor, and this allows the operating system to perform certain operation on regular basis. Now, if suppose there's a program which is being given to the CPU for execution. Now, in between the program, if there is some operating system operation which has to be performed, and if your CPU stops the execution of your program and goes to perform that operating system related operation, we call it as a timer interrupt. Why it is called as timer interrupt? Because execution of a program is not that important as compared to performing the operating system related activity. Because if your operating system fails to perform or fails to give you an output, in short, your program will also not be executed. So when I compare an operating system and when I compare a user program, your operating system is having a highest priority. Therefore, whenever a program is given for execution, and if it stops that execution and goes to perform any operating system related task, we call it as a timer interrupt. Okay. Why? Because in this case, the execution of program was at least priority and operating system task was at the highest priority. That is what is called as timer interrupt. Is this program interrupt and timer interrupt understood to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next is IO interrupts. What are IO interrupts? They are generation for initiation or completion of IO operation. Now, what type of IO operation do I perform? Reading a data from IO device or writing a data from IO device. So whenever I perform this operation of reading from IO device or writing to IO device, before I start and after I complete, the CPU or a system generates an interrupt. So this type of interrupt are called as IO interrupt, which indicates that the IO devices will either read the data or IO device will either write the data, which means whenever I start any IO operation, an interrupt will be generated, and whenever I will complete the IO operation, an interrupt will be generated. These interrupts are generated to inform the system that the IO related operations are being completed. So when will the system understand that the IO operations are completed? Based on these IO interrupts. When will a system understand that the IO operations have started? Based on these interrupts. Okay, so before I start IO operation, system will generate the interrupt and it will make a system aware that the IO operation has been started. Once after the IO operation is being completed, again a system will generate the interrupt to inform that the IO operation is being completed. Okay, or either these IO interrupts will be generated in case of any IO failure or IO error. Suppose if I want to give an input from a keyboard, but if my keyboard is not working, a system will generate an interrupt stating that there was a failure in an input device. Suppose if my output is coming from a speaker, but if a speaker fails to give me that output of a sound, what will a system generate? A system will generate an error stating that the output device speaker is not working. So your IO interrupts are generated in case of any failure or error in the IO devices. Along with that, they may be generated during the start of IO operation or at the end of IO operation. Okay. The next is hardware failure interrupt. What is hardware failure interrupt? They are generated by the failure such as power failure or memory failure. Now, if I am executing a particular program and if the power goes off, and if I am on a desktop, what will happen? a system will generate the interrupt indicating that there was a hardware failure, power supply failure was there. Your memory will store the data temporarily if it is not being saved unless you log in for the next time. So if at all there is any failure in the hardware apart from this IO devices, that is any kind of memory chip failure, any kind of CMOS battery failure, any kind of PCI slots failure, or if any kind of failure in the components of the motherboard, those failure are considered to be as a hardware failure. That is apart from IO devices, input output device को छोड़ के बाकी जो भी hardware आपके system में है, if they fail, they will generate an interrupt, and such interrupts are considered to be as a hardware failure interrupt. Okay, so the interrupts may be generated by the program. If there is a error in the result, they may be generated based on the priority. Like operating system programs will have always a highest priority as compared to user related programs. If there is a failure in IO device, it will generate a IO interrupt. If there is any failure in the hardware apart from IO devices, it will generate a hardware interrupt. Are these interrupts understood to you?
Ma'am.
Okay. What are these interrupts? They are the signal which is telling the CPU to stop the execution of a current task and either start a new execution or come back to your previous execution. Okay.
Ma'am.
Now last mode of transfer.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, will the sleep commands be in the program interrupt or the timer interrupt?
Sleep command.
If in a program there is a sleep command that is telling the CPU to sleep for a time,
Yes.
then it is a program interrupt or timer interrupt.
It is a timer interrupt. It won't be program interrupt. Program interrupt means when I'm getting a result, in that result I am finding any error. At that time it is program.
Okay.
If there is no error in the program, then it will be either your hardware interrupt or your IO interrupt, or it will be your timer interrupt. But whenever the IO devices or hardware devices are involved, then it will be IO or hardware, or else every interrupts are considered to be as timer interrupt. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now next mode of transfer along with your programmed IO and interrupt driven IO is direct memory access. Now what does this DMA means? It stands for direct memory access. Now what was happening in program IO and interrupt driven IO? We were making a use of CPU. What was a function of CPU? To execute the program and to check whether the device is ready or not. If the device is ready, the CPU will perform the processing work and it will complete the transfer from memory to IO and IO to memory. Okay. So we were using this CPU to perform, or we were using the CPU twice in the system. What were those two things in which we were using? First, during a transfer from memory to CPU, and second, during the transfer from CPU to IO. Which means whenever I want to transfer a data from memory to an IO device, what was happening? In between I had a CPU. I cannot directly transfer the data from memory to IO device. It has to go via CPU after it completes the execution. So memory will give a data to CPU. CPU will perform the processing of that particular data from the memory. It will generate that result and give it to the IO device. Or second thing will be, it will take the data from IO device. That is, CPU will take the data from IO device. It will execute within itself and store it inside the memory. So I was involving CPU twice. One during a transfer from memory to IO and other during a transfer from IO to memory. This was happening there in your programmed IO and in your interrupt driven IO. But what we are going to do in DMA is direct memory access. What does this mean? We are going to increase the speed of our IO transfer by removing the role of CPU. That means we are going to remove the CPU from the system and there will be a direct transfer from your memory to IO and IO to memory. Therefore, it is considered to be as direct memory access, or therefore the name is given as direct memory access, where I am removing the involvement of the CPU and increasing the speed of the system. Now, how does this DMA operates? Let us see. Whenever a IO request, when an IO is requested, the CPU instructs the DMA module about the operation by providing the information. Now what does this line mean? That IO wants to execute something. So previously what was happening, IO used to tell CPU, CPU was executing and then storing the data into memory. But now what will this CPU do? Since we have removed the CPU from DMA, so whatever IO has requested to execute, even if it goes to CPU, CPU is not performing the execution, it is directly passing it to DMA module. Okay. Now what, after that request has been gone to the DMA, what is DMA doing? It is telling that what kind of operation is to be performed, whether addition, moving of the data, transferring of a data, subtraction hai, division hai, what kind of operation it has to perform, that will be now told by DMA, which was previously told by CPU. It will also give the address of the IO device. कौन से address IO device के कौन सा memory location से data लेना है, that will now be told by DMA and not by the CPU. It will also give the starting location from where the information has to be read. It will also give the location where the information has to be written. Who is going to give this? DMA will give this, which was previously given by CPU. And how many number of data or how many number of bits and bytes are to be read and written, that also will be told by DMA. Which means whatever work the CPU was doing previously, all this work will now be done by the DMA. Only the work done by CPU over here is, it will just accept the request from IO device and forward it to DMA module. It will not perform any of these work, that is what kind of operation is to be done, how it has to be done, from which memory location the data has to be taken, where the data has to be stored, where it has to be written. All these details will not be told by CPU, but it will be told by DMA module, and it will be done by DMA module. The DMA module transfers the requested block byte by byte directly to the memory without intervention of CPU. Once it knows all these details from where the data has to be taken and where it has to be copied, it will simply take the request from the IO and transfer it to the memory, or take it from the memory and transfer it to the IO without involving the CPU in between. Direct byte by byte data will be copied from memory to IO and IO to memory. Once this has been completed, that is once the completion of DMA is over, it will send the interrupt signal to CPU. Once the DMA completes the transfer, it will just tell the CPU by generating the interrupt, and what it will tell in this interrupt, that the completion is being done of transferring the data from memory to IO or IO to memory. In DMA, the intervention of CPU is limited at the beginning and at the end. That means CPU is involved, but when? At the beginning and at the end. When at the beginning, just to take a request and forward to DMA, and when at the end, to just generate the interrupt and tell that the copying of the data or the transfer of the data is being completed. But the actual processing work which was done by the CPU in your program IO and interrupt driven IO is eliminated and now done by your DMA module. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is happening while the DMA is busy in the data transfer? What is CPU doing? CPU is not sitting idle, it is going and executing some another program. Which means what? I am achieving multitasking and parallelism by using CPU, which is involved in execution of some another program, and by using DMA also into some another program. Okay, so I can use DMA also for execution of the program, which will do all the work of the CPU, and I can make my original CPU to execute some another program and achieve parallelism for execution or improving the speed of the system. Okay, is this clear up till here?
Yes, ma'am.
So whatever work your CPU is doing, we can eliminate that work by involving DMA. What does the DMA do? It performs a direct memory access from IO to main memory and from main memory to IO. Okay, but it involves the CPU only 2 times. One at the beginning, just to forward the request to DMA, because IO devices cannot forward directly to DMA. So it will involve CPU for acting as an interface. And at the end, after DMA completes, it has to intimate the CPU that I have done or I have completed my work of transfer. Okay. So this is your block diagram of DMA, where you have data lines which act as a data bus, for transferring of the data between the different components. You have address lines which will tell you the memory locations where this data is being stored. So your data line is connected to the data register. Your address lines are connected to your address register. And if you see, this DMA has its own control logic. What is this control logic doing? Accepting the DMA request, acknowledging after the request is being done, generating the interrupt, as well as performing read and write operation. So since it has its own brain, it does not require a CPU. Okay, so this control logic is nothing but the brain of your DMA, which will generate the interrupt to the CPU after the execution is completed. It will also use a read and write line to read and write the data. It will use these address line to take the memory location on where this data is stored on the data line. Okay. Is this diagram understood of DMA block? Direct memory access.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So if I compare all the three, program, interrupt and direct memory access, it is better to use direct memory access in terms of speed and in terms of achieving the parallelism. But when I compare program IO and interrupt IO, it is always better to use interrupt driven IO because it is using the CPU in much efficient manner as compared to program IO. Okay. So is this all the three modes of transfer understood to you?
Yes, ma'am.
So program IO divided into two, memory mapped and IO mapped. Interrupt driven IO, second type of mode of transfer, and DMA, third type of mode of transfer. Okay. So with this, we complete with the fifth lesson, that is IO organization. When these three modes of transfer are used, whenever I am going to transfer the data from IO devices to main memory. Okay. These three components will not be used if the data is transferred from memory to memory. Okay. They are used only when there is transfer either from memory to IO or IO to memory. अगर IO नहीं है तो ये तीन चीज भी use नहीं होगा. Okay. Is the entire chapter clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts? Anybody